Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting of the 5th of November. Thank you for attending or watching online. I'm Councillor Bode, Chairman of the Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast live on the YouTube and is also being recorded. Details of how the recordings are stored and how long they are retained for are available via the Council's website. As part of this Council's commitment to reducing the use of paper, councillors and officers may use electronic devices during the meeting. There are no plan tested emergency alarm. If the alarm does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Do not use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is the central reservation in Regent Grove, in front of the police station. Members of the public and press should report to a member of the Town Hall staff who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the committee officer. Please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advises that it's safe to do so. I have alongside me, if I get it right, start at the far end, planning officers Adam Walker, Millie Flynn and James Moulding. Next to me is Development Manager Gary Fisher. To my extreme right is Legal Advisor Nigel Bell, and next to me is Civil and Community Services Manager Patricia Tuckwell. Members, can I check that you've all seen the update report? Have you all had a chance to read it, or do you want some time now?
I've had a chance to read it, but it's, I have to say, it's 8.5 pages. We got it this afternoon. It's quite complex. It's necessary, at least I find it necessary, to go back from the updated report back to the report. I'm disappointed that we got it so late, and I'm disappointed that some pages have been just left out of the report. We didn't, the biodiversity element, if I read it correctly, had just been omitted. So I'm not happy. I have looked at it. Whether I've fully grasped it is another matter. But I'm not sure that having 10 minutes now would make that much difference. Thank you.
Has everyone else read it? At least read it, looked at it? May not have absorbed it because it is rather a lot of detailed information. Councillor King.
Yeah, but I would like to endorse Councillor Gifford's remarks. I think a document this long coming so close to the actual committee meeting is not the right way to handle these things.
Correct. Move on to, so we're not taking time. Apologies and substitutes. We have apologies from Councillor Margrave and Phillips. Councillor King is substituting with Councillor Collins, and Councillor Harrison is substituting with Councillor Aylward. Councillor Aylward will be speaking here, but he's not a member of the committee because he's not had the planning training. So he will be speaking as an objector. Just to make that clear. Are there any other apologies? No. Members' declarations of interest. Anyone with a pecuniary interest will need to leave the room and we'll call back in at the end of the item. Members are also reminded of the need to declare predetermination on any matter. Please may I have any declarations of interest, if there are any? There are no declarations of interest. Site visits. Does any member wish to record if they have undertaken a visit on their own for applications on this evening's agenda? Councillor White.
Thank you. So I've made a site visit to the old Fourpenny Shop Hotel in Crompton Street in Warwick today.
Okay, we didn't discuss it with anyone. You didn't talk to anyone?
I just asked to be shown to the garden area.
Right. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I made a site visit to the item number 4, land south of Westwood Heath Road in Coventry. Didn't speak to anybody.
Okay, thank you. Now down to business. The procedure for each application will be as follows. Each application will have a presentation from a planning officer. This is followed by registered speakers who will be invited to address the committee. I must ask that all speakers stick to their allotted time. Please can all speakers speak directly into the microphones and if necessary, move the microphones closer to you and ensure there are no devices in the way of the microphone. This will enable you to be clearly heard both here and on YouTube. Following registered speakers, the committee will then debate the application. During the debate, members, including myself, may well raise technical questions and issues to which the planning officers or advisors may need to respond, and I will normally invite them to do so. Please can I remind everyone that no officer or council will be permitted to address the committee without my permission. The committee will then make its decision based on the information within the report, any representations at the meeting and the content of its debate. Once the decision is made, I will announce it after the vote. For the benefit of visitors attending the committee, all applications will be decided in accordance with the current National Planning Policy Framework and the Council's adopted local plan policies, which are set out a presumption in favour of sustainable development unless there are material planning considerations that indicate otherwise. Could do with a comma in there, I have to say. Applications are considered against policies containing local neighbourhood development plans that have been approved following a public referendum. Applications in accord with the local plan will usually be permitted. Applications must only be refused where there are valid planning reasons for doing so. This will help to avoid legal challenges against decisions and avoid unnecessary legal costs to the council and to council taxpayer. Please note that I've already agreed that if needed, the meeting will adjourn at a suitable point around 2 hours into the meeting to allow for a comfort break. And finally, whilst I and all committee members fully appreciate the importance of the decisions being made this evening and that they may well generate strong feelings, I take this opportunity to remind everybody to remain calm and courteous at all times. There aren't any action points for me to update you on from the previous meeting, so we can now move to the first application, which is agenda item 4, W/25/0388, land south of Westwood Heath Road, Coventry.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The first application before you this evening is an outline application for up to 140 dwellings with associated works. It's all matters reserved except for the means of access to the site, so it's the principle and the means of access to the site that fall to be considered at this stage. This is the site location plan, just showing the site edged in red. And you can see more context to the site on this aerial photo. So at present the site is a single agricultural field. It's surrounded by other agricultural land to the south and to the east. To the west of the site is a strip of land that contains some agricultural buildings with Bockenden Road and a new housing development known as Westwood Park further to the west. To the north of the site, you've got Westwood Heath Road, and that forms the boundary with Coventry City Council area. Opposite the site is a vacant building, which is the former Network Rail College Conference Centre, and then various housing and employment development extending towards the north within Coventry. So just an image just to give an idea of what the site looks like. So this is from Westwood Heath Road, looking along the site frontage. So you've got the existing hedgerow with the site behind. You can see in the distance the new Westwood Park residential development, and there's the access to the Network Rail College building just on the right-hand side. So this is taken from the local plan policies map. So the site you can see is this field just here. The area hashed over in grey is the safeguarded land, and then you can see the housing allocation to the west. I think this image is quite useful, just seeing how the site relates to the wider area in terms of the existing development being on the edge of Coventry and being on the edge of the urban area or built development within Warwick District. So this is a local context plan provided as part of the applicant's submission. So you can see the site just here, edged red, and then it's just showing the extent of facilities and services that exist within the vicinity of the site. So first dash line is 400 metres away, the second one's 800 metres, third one's 1200 metres up to 1600 metres, so about a mile, where you've got Tile Hill Railway Station, got bus stops on Westwood Heath Road, Burton Green and the facilities and primary school that exists there, secondary school, all within reasonable distance of the site. This is the parameter plan that's been provided with the application, and this will be the applicant seeking approval of this plan to form the basis to guide the future reserve matters. So the yellow area is the area for the residential development, so that would be the houses and roads, etc. That would include, or notionally indicated as providing an area of public open space, and then you've got landscaping all around the edge of the site, and that would include just here space for sustainable urban drainage features, and the majority of the existing hedgerow and trees all around the site will be retained. You've got the vehicular access coming in here, so a section of hedgerow will be removed, sufficient to allow for the visibility displays, and it's proposed that a replacement section of hedgerow will be provided behind the visibility display. And then there's also a dedicated pedestrian access in the top left-hand corner, just here onto Westwood Heath Road. This is an illustrative layout that's been submitted with the application. So this is for illustrative purposes only. It's just showing how the sites could come forward. So you can see the access into the site, leading down into this into an area of public open space, which will be a sort of feature green space within the development. Houses set in sort of perimeter blocks, landscaping all around the edge of the site, and these landscaping areas could carry pedestrian walkways and cycleways, drainage features here, other areas of landscaping, and it's showing how connections could be made, or potential future connections could be made to the wider safeguarded land, and that's important in terms of policy DS21 and development not prejudicing any wider development on the safeguarded land. So to summarise the main points, it's an outline application for up to 140 dwellings on an area of safeguarded land. The principle of the development and the means of access are being considered at this stage. All other matters are reserved for future approval. The Council's 5-year housing land supply position means that paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies and the tilted balance is engaged. Planning permission should therefore be granted unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The delivery of new market and affordable housing is a significant benefit of the scheme. The site is deemed to be a sustainable location for the proposed development. Officers are satisfied that the proposal would make an effective use of land and that a well-designed scheme can be brought forward through the reserve matters, and significant positive weight is attached to those benefits. Conversely, there would be a loss of some best and most versatile land, which is an identified harm of the development, and there will be some limited landscape harm, and these weigh against the proposal. I would just highlight to members within the update report, in the officer response to Councillor Hazelwood's comments, that number 5, that provides a sort of a summary of the benefits and harms, sort of clearly set out in bullet points, and then with a sort of brief summary at the bottom of that. So just draw members' attention to that for ease of reference. All of the planning matters and planning impacts are discussed within the report. That includes highway impacts, and officers are satisfied that they can be adequately mitigated through either planning conditions or planning obligations. So in conclusion, officers have concluded that the benefits of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the harm, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I have a number of speakers, and we'll start off with Councillor Archie Taylor, a Town Parish Councillor objecting. You have 3 minutes from when you start.
Can I begin with a little history? Oh, sorry. Okay. Can I begin with a little history? It was a real shock when Inspector Ward insisted that the 425 houses would be built in Westwood Heath on vintage Greenbelt because we had a duty of care to Coventry with its surplus population. However, there were safeguards. 2 new schools were to be built at Kings Hill. Improvements were to be made at the dangerous junction of Cromwell Lane and Westwood Heath Lane. And most important of all, no more than 425 houses were to be built until local roads were improved. Presumably, officers were responsible for enforcing these changes, but they don't seem to have done too well. Mind you, not everyone was unhappy. The leader of the Labour group wrote joyously in the Kenilworth Weekly News that houses should be built in the Kenilworth. I did reply as a Labour member that we have a few problems with HS2, but what I didn't realise at the time was that the surplus population was a lie. A few months later at the full council, I did point out the truth, but inwardly I recognised that we had to have a local plan to stop developers from plundering all non-Greenbelt. I have to confess, officers, that I'm so disappointed by your proposal to build another 140 houses, which is a complete reversal of Inspector Ward's strategy. On a couple of small points, I do think the access road into the estate make Westwood Heath Road more dangerous, and I certainly wouldn't boast about the bus service. The last bus leaves at 7:25 from Coventry, while Sunday is a blank day. More importantly, I'm astounded that you've ignored the inspector's declaration that no more houses should be built until better transport links are established. Nor do I believe that the safeguarded land should be disposed of so irresponsibly when it was clearly intended for the overspill of Coventry. And any transfer of land must be part of the next local plan. I don't really understand why we have to build houses because we have only 2.34 years housing supply, and surely that's the officials' fault. What I do recognise, however, is the complete lack of engagement in this proposal. Only 10 years ago, there were 383 houses in Burton Green, but with this development, nearer 1,200, with hundreds more to follow. Right next to us, we have planned 240 houses in Coventry, and near the border with Berkswell, almost 2,000. In addition, we have 4 battery farms right next to us, and of course, we have our wonderful HS2, which as a former director of HS2, I find difficult to talk about. Finally, Mr. Chair, I note that the officers have supported the proposals. Could I ask them 3 quick questions? 1, how are our 2 lovely schools progressing in Kings Hill? Is it responsible to respect Inspector Ward's strategy? And is it morally right to impose a rushed and ill-prepared proposal on a community on its knees?
Thank you. Can you draw your
Of
marks
course,
to a close?
councillors.
Can you draw your marks to a close, please?
Pardon?
You've had your 3 minutes.
1 sentence.
1 sentence.
Shall I read it, or can they read it?
Go on, 1 sentence.
It's a compliment. Of course, councillors, is it morally right to impose Western huge on its knees? Of course, councillors, you already know the answers. Oppose this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now call Mr. Ian Stevenson, who couldn't actually make it tonight for other things. So it is going to be read by Patricia.
I'm reading this on behalf of Mr. Ian Stevenson, so these are not my views. When I say I don't mean myself, I mean Mr. Stevenson. This is presented on behalf of Ian Stevenson, Chair of Westwood Heath Residents Association. I wish to object to the subject application on the following grounds. 1. The land parcel SG01 was safeguarded but not allocated for development in the current local plan. To develop on this land in advance of the conclusion of the emerging South Warwickshire local plan would be inappropriate. 2. the safeguarding of SG01 was based on the premise that there was overspill from Coventry required. This has been shown to be misguided since the Coventry population figures on which this was based were proven to be inaccurate following the latest census. 3. The Coventry Local Plan Regulation 819 review has demonstrated that Coventry has greater than 5 years supply of land for housing and no longer has an overspill need in Warwickshire. 4. The land does not directly meet needs in Warwickshire either. There have also been significant developments of purpose-built student accommodation, PBSA, in close proximity to the University of Warwick, which have taken away demand from housing in the local area for student accommodation. In excess of 4,000 rooms of PBSA have been built or approved in the last 3 years. 5. The parcel SG01 is high-quality farmland and does not fall into the category of grey belt or low-value land. 6. The development is not sustainable without significant improvements in healthcare and primary education facilities. Current residents of the latest development south of Westwood Heath Road experience difficulties in obtaining these facilities. 7. In the current local plan, the development south of Westwood Heath Road was restricted until road infrastructure, particularly at the Cromwell Land/Westwood Heath junction, was improved. There are frequent collisions at this junction, and no such improvements have taken place. In summary, there are no exceptional circumstances for approving this application. Again, this was on behalf of Ian Stevenson.
Thank you. I call on Mr. James Bonner, support applicant, and you have 3 minutes from when you start.
Good evening, my name's James Bonner from Turley, the planning agents representing the applicant IM Land. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. We fully support your officer's recommendation to approve this application for 140 much needed homes, 40% of which will be affordable. In 2017, the site was removed from the Greenbelt and safeguarded for development in the Warwick local plan. This was justified in part by its sustainable location, close to Coventry, major employers, services, and with good public transport connectivity. As the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing with tilted balance supplies, we agree with your officers that the benefits of the scheme significantly outweigh the comparatively limited harms, particularly given the extent of the housing land shortfall at 2.34 years. The South Warwickshire Joint Local Plan is not anticipated to be adopted until late 2027 or 2028, and so it is inevitable that some unallocated sites will need to come forward in the meantime. Given this, it's right that sustainable, safeguarded sites such as this are prioritised. This is a position that's consistent with the Council's spatial strategy policy DS4, which is to direct most of the growth to the main urban areas, including the southern edge of Coventry. Your officer's report clearly sets out why the scheme is justified, noting how the application has not received any objections from statutory consultees, including Historic England, the Lead Local Flood Authority, the Council's ecologist, and the highway authorities on any technical grounds. The applicant is committed to sustainability, and it's recognised that the site's sustainability goes beyond its locational benefits. For example, compliance with measures in the Net Zero Carbon SPD. Subject to further details being agreed at reserved matters, the proposals have the support of your Council's Carbon and Energy Advisor. And in terms of biodiversity, the scheme is supported by detailed ecological assessment, with mitigation measures to be secured through detailed design, and a planning condition to ensure at least 10% biodiversity net gain. Finally, the new homes will be supported by the necessary supporting infrastructure, including through contributions towards schools, healthcare, public transport, and other sustainable travel improvements. In summary, we fully support your officer's recommendation and respectfully ask that members approve this sustainable and policy compliant development. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I call on Councillor Azord. You have 5 minutes from when you start.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So this decision matters far more than beyond one field in Westwood Heath. If you approve this scheme, you won't just allocate land for 140 houses in the parish of Burton Green, you'll dismantle the integrity of your own plan. The planning inspector in 2017 confirmed that this land was removed from the Greenbelt only to meet longer term needs beyond the planned period, if required, and only through a future review. Residents were told clearly, we are safeguarding it, not allocating it. Our chief executive wrote to Burton Green Parish Council a few months ago confirming the same. Yet what's proposed tonight is the opposite of that promise. That review, the South Warwickshire Local Plan, is the right place to decide this issue with full public consultation and council scrutiny. Approving development now would preempt that process and bypass members' authority. Policy DS21 could not be clearer. I quote, planning permission for the permanent development of safeguarded land will not be granted ahead of a review of the local plan. This is your current adopted policy. Officers now suggest DS21 doesn't wholly preclude development, but that misreads its intention, which is to hold land in reserve until a formal review decides its future. Approving now preempts that review in all but name. The officer report itself says little weight can be attached to the emerging South Warwickshire plan because it's not yet at Regulation 19. And if so, tonight's decision must rely on the current plan. And that plan forbids the use of safeguarded land. Let's also remind ourselves this land was removed from the Greenbelt solely to meet Coventry's supposed housing need. That justification is gone. Coventry City Council's formal response to the South Warwickshire plan states, I quote, Coventry City Council can accommodate its housing needs within its own boundary and therefore does not require neighbouring authorities to provide additional land. It even supports returning its own safeguarded land to Greenbelt. Meanwhile, just next door, you saw on the drawing, only 119 of 550 homes at Westwood Park have been built out, and at Kings Hill, over 1,000 homes have planning permission without a brick being laid. We're told this proposal helps the 5-year housing supply, but it doesn't deliver homes, it just adds numbers to a spreadsheet. Officers say Coventry's policy change does not materially alter the assessment, but it does, because it removes the reason this land was taken out of the Greenbelt in the first place. You can't retrofit a new justification just because Warwick has a supply problem. That's plan making by application, not democratic process. Officers have invoked the so-called tilted balance. However, that doesn't apply because DS21 is up to date. And even if it did, the harms outweigh the benefits. Infrastructure shortfalls, pressure on schools and health services, poor sustainability. Coventry City Council strongly objected to development south of Coventry, quoting our own sustainability appraisal, which ranks this site amongst the worst performing strategic growth options. And remember, this isn't marginal land or grey belt, it's some of the best and most versatile agricultural land in the district. The very land we should be protecting for food security and for carbon capture, not covering with tarmac. Yet officers call it a sustainable location for development and give it top marks. And you can't see the workings. And that lack of transparency should trouble every one of you. Members, this committee exists to make decisions that are lawful, transparent and defensible. This recommendation is premature, it's opaque and contrary to adopted policy. Inspectors and courts, notably Gladman versus Central Bedfordshire 2019, have confirmed safeguarded land cannot be released ahead of a plan review. If you proceed today, you risk an avoidable legal challenge, reputational damage and the erosion of public trust. So press pause. Don't be shunted down the wrong path. This isn't anti-housing, it's pro-good governance. Let this be decided properly through the plan-making process and not by developer pressure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members. Councillor White.
Thank you. So I was concerned to hear about the safeguarding provisions and promises made as recently as 3 months ago in respect to this parcel of land, which approval would presumably mean that they would be reneged upon. But the point I originally wanted to make was about the statement on page 18 of our papers, which says that it is accepted that the traffic generated by this individual scheme could be accommodated on the local road network without resulting in a severe impact. So I know this site well because it's on my way to work via Crackley Lane, Bockenden Road to the university. But I can't see reference in the report or the highway section of the report to the Bockenden Road border of the site. And as a regular user of that road, I know that it is, first of all, it's a lane which joins with another lane, Crackley Lane, which are, as lanes usually are, just about wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. At the moment, interspersed lots of heavy HS2 traffic crossing. And that those lanes are in quite poor condition at times and they're not lit. And I just wonder why there wasn't any mention of Bockenden Road and Crackley Lane in the document, or if there is, I've missed it and would be grateful to be pointed to it, given that it says it's accepted that traffic generated by this scheme could be accommodated on the local road network, so those roads form part of that network. And I just wondered whether there had been an assessment of impact on that side of the road network. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. Yes, so those statements within the report, they reflect comments from the local highway authority, so they've assessed the application in terms of the highway safety impacts and the impact on the local highway network, and they've confirmed that they're satisfied that it wouldn't result in a severe or unacceptable impact. We have also consulted with Coventry City Council, and their local highway authority has provided comments as well. They've not raised any objections, and National Highways as well. So from the consultee advice, the specialist consultee advice on highway matters, there are no objections subject to conditions and planning obligations. To pick up on your point in terms of Bockenden Road, just put the pointer on. So this junction that you mentioned, Councillor, at the top, local highway authority hasn't raised that as a particular issue. I think because of the separation distance between the site and that junction, and the fact that the proposed vehicular access for the development is some distance away over here, they've not viewed that as a particular concern.
Thank you. So thank you, that's helpful. My concern was less about the distance between the exit point of the new site for residents' vehicles and the Bockenden Road junction. It was more about the potential volume of vehicles which might leave the site and then turn left and then left again into Bockenden Lane. And as I said, that lane, that road is a lane. It's in poor condition. It's not set up for the volume of vehicles that currently use it. Thank you for explaining what you have. I'm still concerned that there will be an additional volume of vehicles utilising an already busy road stroke lane, particularly at peak times, which will be dangerous and a risk to people in traffic. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to officers for, I know it was a long read, but it was very helpful to have that supplementary document relating to the questions raised by Councillor Hazelwood that I think are really important. My question is about the lack of a 5-year housing supply and the tilted balance that therefore has to be applied. And I suppose my question is, if we were not in that position, would we have a very different recommendation? So we're only doing this because we don't have a 5-year land supply, and therefore we're forced to accept it. And particularly then to focus on, as I understand it, the tilted balance means that our normal policies are no longer applicable. And can you confirm that that applies to DS21? Because it seems, and I've just got it in front of me, and Councillor Hazelwood referenced it, that if in normal circumstances DS21 on safeguarded land would mean that this could not go ahead, is that therefore rendered invalid because of the tilted balance?
So in terms of first part of your question, and the 5-year housing land supply. So yeah, if the position, if we're in a different position, and the council had a demonstrable 5-year housing land supply, and this application came in, we would still be assessing it against policy DS21 because it's safeguarded land. So that clearly states that rural and open countryside policies will apply. So that will then take us to policy H1 of the local plan, and that covers housing development or residential development within the open countryside. So if the council did have a 5-year housing land supply, policy H1 would be up to date, fully up to date, and that there wouldn't be any requirement for the council to consider the application against policy, paragraph 11D, part 2 of the MPPF. So it would be applying policy H1 in its full form in terms of the open countryside, and that would change the planning assessment. I mean, I wouldn't like to say whether or not it would change the recommendation, but I can say with certainty that it fundamentally alters the planning assessment and the planning balance exercise that you're required to go through.
So if I understand that right, we are pushed into this position because of the lack of a 5-year housing supply. It makes it, basically ties our hands behind our back.
Yeah, the 5-year housing land supply position has a significant impact on how this application is assessed. I mean, it's speculation whether or not this application would have come in if the council's 5-year housing land supply was different, but it's a very different assessment.
Sorry, could I just ask one more question, if I may, about DS21 safeguarded land. Section C, development that would prejudice the future comprehensive development of the safeguarded land area will not be permitted. I'm concerned about if it is a large area of safeguarded land, and we've run into significant problems in the district where small parcels of land in a larger area have been developed individually, and then it's resulted in a less than satisfactory comprehensive development, and it's caused all sorts of problems. So can we have some assurance that this Article 20, DS21C, has that been considered as to whether, if this were approved and then the rest of the safeguarded land were taken up, how would it fit in? Is that looked at all, or is it just being considered as a little parcel?
Through you, Chair, it is piecemeal development because it's not a comprehensive development of the safeguarded land area. It's just a small parcel of it. But officers have considered that. The key thing is ensuring, in terms of DS21C, that it doesn't prejudice the wider safeguarded land. That can be accounted for example, through these connections, so it wouldn't have an undue impact on the adjacent safeguarded land, if that was to ever come forward for development in the future, you know, you could make vehicle access or other types of connections through. So there would be a joint, there's an opportunity to provide a joined up and more comprehensive development. And then the application's also been assessed in terms of the wider safeguarded land, in terms of the infrastructure and the highway infrastructure contribution. So that's particularly with the multimodal transport corridor, that's where a contribution's been secured for that, because that is tied in, that road infrastructure is tied in with development coming forward on, or potential development coming forward on the safeguarded land. So, yeah, it has been, to answer your questions, Councillor, yes, it has been looked at in a comprehensive manner as much as it possibly can when it's come forward as a small application on a parcel of a wider area.
Yeah, I just look at exit 10 at the bottom there and think of Brimstone End at Chesterton Gardens and the problems we've had with that. And also the fact that, for example, in the land east of Kenilworth, one of the principles for developing a big site was to have a spine road going through it. And I can't see any evidence that that's been thought of. It seems to me that this is not looking sufficiently future-proofed, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gifford.
I have to say, it's essentially the questions that I was going to ask have been asked. I mean, because safeguarding land was my real and the high 5-year, our lack of a 5-year land supply was what I was wanting more detail on, and those I think have really been dealt with just by those questions. There was just one small question which I'd like to ask, which was, we're told that Coventry has a 5-year land supply, and this is right on the edge of Coventry. Is that relevant at all?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So yeah, I picked this up in the update, which Councillor Hazelwood's raised this point. Officers don't consider that Coventry's position in terms of their emerging plan materially affects the assessment of this application. Warwick District Council is considering it in the context of it being land within its jurisdiction, the 5-year housing land supply position, the tilted balance, the need for new homes within Warwick. And so that's the basis, that's the policy basis of the assessment.
One final question has come up with the President, with the Councillor Hazelwood's presentation, was that it was removed from the Green Belt to provide housing for Coventry overspill, which wasn't, it turned out was not required. That is, as I understand it, from your side, it's really not relevant. Is that right now? Or, I mean, that may have been the reason given, but we are not, but it is now safeguarded land within Warwick District, and the fact that it was mistaken information that was given at the time is not relevant, is that right?
Yeah, the background to the safeguarded land allocation is that it was identified as an area for safeguarding, and that was to include land that could accommodate overspill from Coventry. That's the background to it. That's then been carried forward into the adopted local plan. So the facts of the matter are it's safeguarded land, so we're applying policy DS21, and we've been through that exercise of going through the various policies, and that's resulted in the recommendation. So Coventry's housing position in their emerging plan doesn't change this in any way.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I know last night we were privileged to have Mr Pilcher here from County Highways. He's not here tonight, and I have a couple of questions about highways issues from this. Looking at the planning portal, it seems that back in August, Highways said that pending completion of various survey work being done for the South Warwickshire local plan emerging, they were proposing that this application be deferred. They subsequently wrote on the 20th of October, didn't comment on their deferral, didn't withdraw it, didn't say they supported it, just made some comments about highways contribution and other infrastructure contributions. Have Highways actually confirmed that between the 27th of August and the 20th of October, they have changed their mind, or is their position still that pending completion of the survey work being done as part of the South Warwickshire local plan, that they would still prefer this to be deferred?
That was the recommendation from Highways back in the summer. There were discussions between the local planning authority and Highways, and the position of the local planning authority is that there are no valid grounds to delay a decision on the application on that basis, because it was tied in with the emerging South Warwickshire local plan. Given the length of time that's involved, the stage we're at with the plan, there weren't reasonable grounds to hold the application in abeyance, essentially, until that work, that particular highways work had been undertaken. So as part of that, yeah, within the MPPF, there's clear guidance for timely decision making. That's clearly set out in the MPPF. And so taking that on board, and the stage we're at with the Warwickshire local plan, that request from Highways isn't something that could reasonably be accommodated. So the discussions then went on, and that led them to their most recent stance on the application.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, what Highways said in their letter of the 20th of October was basically, should Warwick District Council, as the local planning authority, be minded to approve the proposal, they would propose certain Section 106 obligations. But they still don't actually say in black and white, as a result of the discussions between the 27th of August and the 20th of October, that they are happy. They're basically throwing the decision back at us, as I read that from what they've said there. If I could go on to the traffic assessment that was completed, I think, by David Tucker Associates back in March of this year, and they'd had a road safety audit completed by Meraki Alliance. That made a number of recommendations regarding Westwood Heath Road. For example, the introduction of a 3-metre cycle pedestrian footpath on Westwood Heath Road, and also a reduction in the speed limit there from 40 to 30. Is that part of this application or not?
Through you, Chair. Yes, it is. There are certain off-site works that form part of this proposal. It's on the opposite side of Westwood Heath Road. It's a section of cycleway. There's this area of pedestrian cycleway here. There's crossing, tactile paving to form a crossing point just here, and then where the pedestrian access is proposed here. You can just about see that black mark next to the point. That's a pedestrian refuge, and that's proposed as part of the application as well, and that change to the speed limit as well, or extending the existing 30-mile speed limit. So yes, they're works that are part of the proposal and would form part of any permission.
If I may, Chair. So presumably, when Highway said on the 27th of August to defer, they were already conscious of what was in the plans there based upon the road safety audit that had been completed previously.
Yeah, really, there's been sort of two sides of the highways issues. There's the technical detail in terms of the point of access and the works that are going on Westwood Heath Road, and then there's issues around highway capacity and the link road. So in terms of the technical detail, that was concluded sort of reasonably swiftly with the submission of additional information. So Highways confirmed that they're happy with that. And then there's been this separate conversation going on around contributions for the link road, and that took a little bit longer, but we have now got a final position on that.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the update reports from following on from Councillor Hazelwood's comments. And I just wanted to draw, draw attention to the section on the harms. And this was quite significant because it's obviously about losing this valuable, best and most versatile agricultural land, which seems to be in the media a lot at the moment about the loss of land. Normally solar farms, but here we're talking about development, which is quite a key area. And I just feel as that in the landscaping, there's been obviously considered in light of this tilted balance, which seems to me, there seems to be a lot of tilting here to achieve that slightly, balance towards supporting rather than opposing. And I just wondered if you could share your thoughts on, or your understanding is what considerations are taken into account in deciding that key area there is classed as sort of moderate, on the spectrum of moderate harm, and thinking, is there anything more detail behind that thinking? For instance, policy guidelines, because obviously this is quite a key area about the importance of that land, and therefore just understanding more about why you came to that conclusion. It's moderate, because with another, it seems quite subjective that, and could equally be said, well, actually this is quite valuable land. Similarly with the landscaping, it seems to the position of it, that landscaping is quite an important aspect, and therefore yet both are given sort of moderate weighting. And I wonder if you can explain more about your reasoning for that, and if there's any policy guidelines that can be referred to on that. Thanks.
In planning terms, you could have a sort of a scale of benefits and harms, and it's quite common practice really to have, you would have sort of limited harm at the bottom, moving on to moderate harm, significant, and then substantial. That is a sort of scale, so you can apply benefits and harms to that. In terms of the harms in this case, yes, there's the loss of best and most versatile land, and there's clear guidance in the NPPF and planning practice guidance and local plan policy to steer development away from those areas. I think in this case, it's 5.8 hectares. It's a singular field. I'm not necessarily wanting to sort of play it down too much, but in terms of its relative extent and the amount of agricultural land in the district, it's pretty modest, really. There's no real policy guidance to say what weight should be attributed. That's a question for the decision maker. In this case, it's planning judgment. Officers have said moderate harm, and within that spectrum itself, probably falling towards the lower end of moderate harm. But as the decision makers committee could take a different view on that. In terms of the landscape harm, yes, there's going to be a change to the character of the landscape here. That's essentially changing a field to a housing development, but there is scope for mitigation. There's quite a lot of green infrastructure and open space provided that would help integrate it into the landscape. Well, that's detail that would come through the reserve matters, but there is scope for that to be achieved. A lot of the existing boundary hedges and trees would be retained, some removal along the frontage, but there would also be some replacement hedging provided. And obviously there'd be a change to existing views from some of these properties here and within the vicinity of the site. So yes, there's an impact on the landscape. Officers have judged that as sort of limited adverse weight because it's not deemed to be necessarily extensive. So they're the main harms that have been identified. So then they have to then be balanced against the benefits of the development. And clearly when there's no 5-year housing land supply, the delivery of housing is a significant benefit. 140 houses is a reasonable number, I think, in anyone's book. And then there are also the benefits around it being a sustainable location, making an effective use of land, and a high quality development, which are all things that the MPPF seek to achieve. So undertaking that balancing exercise, that's where officers have gone with it, but clearly members may look at those benefits and harms slightly differently.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Could I please ask a question about our policy DS20, Directions for Growth South of Coventry? In that policy it says, the area to which this policy relates, which clearly includes this site, will be subject to an early partial local plan review within 5 years of the date of the adoption of our local plan. Can I ask, has that review been undertaken, and can we see the results of that review?
The review that's been undertaken is being done as part of the emerging South Warwickshire local plan. So that forms the review.
So it's already nearly, when did we adopt the local plan? In 2017. So it's actually long overdue. I find it very hard for us when our local plan says this review should be undertaken, and it hasn't been undertaken because of the complexities around the land south of Coventry, and particularly when we have the big Kings Hill site, which we granted outline planning permission for several years ago and has not been developed at all. It seems that the whole policy of DS20 is in some confusion. It's very difficult with that to work out whether this should go ahead, because I can't see how it fits into what we've said in our local plan. Or do we just sort of discount DS20 and ignore it?
Through you, Tess. Yes, well, just trying to find the full wording of DS20. Yeah, so it surrounds the comprehensive longer-term planning of the area and positively addressing infrastructure pressures. So there is some consistency with this application. But to go back to your point around the local plan review, yeah, you could say it is overdue, but the work that's the process that the review is taking is the South Warwickshire local plan. That is the situation.
Thank you.
Councillor Yellow-Brigada.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I'm finding it hard to find justification or logic in releasing safeguarded land now rather than waiting for the review of South Warwickshire local plan. My question, however, is on how will the development achieve biodiversity net gain, and what monitoring will be in place, and what steps will ensure carbon reduction compliance at reserved matters stage? Thanks.
So in terms of biodiversity net gain, so there's a statutory requirement to provide at least 10% biodiversity net gain through this development. That will be secured through a condition which is automatically applied to relevant applications for planning permission. So that would secure it. And the developer would have to come in and provide that information to the local planning authority. So we will be satisfied that is secured. Whether that's a mixture of on-site or off-site, that's detail to be agreed, but it will be secured as a statutory requirement. In terms of the carbon offsetting carbon offsetting and climate change issues, the developer will be required to submit a detailed energy statement with the reserve matters applications, and that would have to demonstrate how the proposals comply with the net zero carbon DPD. So we would assess it at that stage and ensure that the development meets the relevant policy requirements within that development plan document.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
140 homes on this site. What density of dwellings does that give us?
Across the site as a whole, it's 37.1, so 37 dwellings on the site as a whole, which is in officer's opinion a good density, a reasonable density, makes an effective use of the land. If you take out the areas of open space, obviously that density reduces, but the open space is an important element to take into account and to create high quality residential environments. So yeah, it's an effective use of land in offices.
Yeah, I ask in context of this administration's desire to increase densities for obvious reasons, and I understand also this would be a matter for the design layout at another stage where this to go through.
All right, members, what are your thoughts? You've obviously got the 5-year land supply is a big weight over us. We'll see where we go.
Are you asking for a proposal?
It depends what time you want to go home.
Well, I would like to make a proposal that we should refuse this application, and on the basis of, and I'm just sort of skimming through it to try and work out the exact wording, on non-compliance with DS20, the land south of Coventry, and DS21, safeguarded land. And it's about the fact that this has been put forward without any reference to a comprehensive development area, because DS20 says individual proposals for this area in land south of Coventry should support the comprehensive longer-term development of this whole area south of Coventry. It's changed a lot since the plan was developed. Lots of things have happened. HS2 has come and hit us, and things like the Kings Hill site, which was allocated, doesn't seem to be going ahead. There are so many changes to the whole sort of development of this area, and this seems to be an individual application for a small part of it, without any reference to that, without any reference to the proposed review of this area that is indicated should have been undertaken within 5 years of the original adoption of the plan. So therefore, on that basis, I would not want to support this, and I would want to say that we should refuse.
Think of the detailed reasons why. Councillor Gifford.
I'll try and get the exact wording.
Councillor Gifford.
Yes.
don't want to support this application at all. I don't think it's one that should go ahead at the moment. On the other hand, I am very concerned that at a planning inquiry we would find that the lack of the 5-year land supply would be something that would just land us with costs, would do nothing to assist the residents, and we would. But on the other hand, I feel that everything that's just been said by Councillor Kennedy is absolutely correct. You know, Kings Hill is still undeveloped, so you wonder why it's such a why the great urgency to produce the houses here when developers of Kings Hill feel that there's no market at the moment. An alternative might be to defer, but I think that would also be something that would be difficult to justify, except that there hasn't been the review as yet of this safeguarded land. I just wonder whether that's would be a justification for a deferral, or that's a question rather than a. Because we also talked about highways, and I'm not totally happy with the.
Can you make sure you're
this in
speaking into
terms
the
of-
mic?
Sorry?
Make sure you're speaking into the mic. It's difficult to hear what you're saying.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, I'm not entirely happy with the sort of basic layout in terms of thinking of Chesterton Gardens. I want to see much more evidence that it was possible with the internal highways there for it to move to that we wouldn't have the same sort of Chesterton Gardens type situation where substantial development takes place to the south and there isn't the road structure to take it. But so I feel that this has come, personally I don't like the development, I don't like the application, but I'm concerned that if we just refuse it, that we would be very likely to lose on appeal. But that's the deferral might give us more of an idea as to whether this could justifiably be refused, or indeed whether a better application could come forward. Thank you.
Can I remind members, this is outline permission. That is an indicative layout. It may look nothing like that at all. So comparing it to the one on Sydenham, which is detailed planning, there's no comparison. Gary.
Thank you, Chair. Just members to try and bring together some of the advice that you've received from the officers this evening and of course in the report. And it's really to sort of hone into this issue of principle. The council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply. The tilted balance, as I know members are aware, is engaged in this application, as it would be for all residential proposals that might come forward. And so what that means is that the consideration in terms of the principle, it doesn't really just sort of start and finish with policies DS20 and DS21. The starting point, as Adam set out and as the report has also indicated, is really that planning permission should be granted unless there are any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh those benefits. So applying that, Councillor Kennedy, to the concerns that you've raised, for members to refuse planning permission, you would need to be as certain as you could be that when you're looking at that overall planning balance, that those matters that you've raised do demonstrably and significantly outweigh the benefits. That's not the position that officers take, but that's not a surprise to you because that's set out in detail in the report. What I would ask members to also remember is that we need to be looking at these sort of developments within the wider context of the MPPF as well, and the principles around directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, following on from Councillor King's question, securing well-designed places, and remembering that at this stage this is only an outline, so we are talking about the pure principle, providing affordable homes, and we've talked also about the infrastructure, and so it's about balancing all of the benefits that members have heard about against the potential impacts. And I think officers have been clear that in our mind, the impacts are around the agricultural land issue and around the landscape harm, but officers don't believe that those impacts outweigh the benefits. In fact, officers, I think, would say it's very strongly balanced in the opposite direction to that. And as we've done before, where members are considering which way to sort of go on these sort of proposals, if you could also remember, you know, the importance of making decisions based on sound planning grounds. And I'm not going to repeat all the risks that are associated if you don't do that, because you've heard us say it many, many times before. But it is the lack of the 5-year housing land supply and that engagement of the tilted balance, which means that members have to think about this in a way that's different to that which would have been the case. Coming back to your original question, I think, or point at Councillor Kennedy, were the tilted balance not engaged? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members? Councillor Gifford.
I hear that, and I think it is a sustainable location. I'm not happy with it, but I feel that it doesn't fill me with joy, but I think we're between a rock and a hard place, and it is outlined planning permission. I think I have to go along with the officer's recommendation and propose that we grant this outline application.
Yeah, can I just hold you there? We have a proposal which hasn't been seconded yet, which comes in first. If that's lost, then yours comes in. If it's won, yours doesn't. So do I have anyone second Councillor Kennedy's proposal, which I assume is the same proposal as you made before, which was refusal?
Well, I have a stab at refining the reasons. It's not to do, I mean, this may be a very good application. My problem is how it relates to DS20 and DS21, that I don't see any evidence of what recent assessment has been done of the overall development of the land south of Coventry, and clearly reading our local plan and looking at what's happened, a lot of things have changed, and there are a lot of big questions there about how it fits into a comprehensive plan for that area, both in DS20, which is the whole area, and DS21, which refers specifically to this area of safeguarded land. So it may well go ahead, but I would, before supporting it, I would like to see how the comprehensive plan for this area comes through. So it would be saying we refuse for non-compliance with DS21 and 20.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So we now vote for those in favour of refusal and the reasons for that. So all in favour of those for refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5. Those against? That's 4. So it's clearly carried that we refuse. And we have the reasons for that. Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is double oblique for some reason, 25/1151-32, Littleton Close, Kenilworth.
Thank you, Chair. This is the next item, 32 Littleton Close, a retrospective application for landscaping work and boundary treatments to the rear garden. Application is before members today because of the number of public objections. Site location plan with the site edged in red. And an aerial view where you can see the site edged in red here. You can see the common to the south and the footpath that runs alongside the site in blue here, with the main path through the common joining it here. The existing and proposed site plan levels. The existing here, because the development is retrospective, this is what has been shown as pre-development. And then the post here shows the groundworks to the rear, which is a terracing to the rear garden. So you've got the original patio, which is remaining the same, and then roughly a 50 centimetre step down to the main platform here, and then a final platform down here. The other addition has been this gabion wall to the southern boundary. So previously this was set further back within the site, so this has been extended out to fill out the boundary, bringing it closer to the common. Existing elevations. So there's an existing gabion wall, and then it had a fence at the common level. And then the proposed, or the as constructed, where the gabion wall has been brought out, and new fences are proposed to be erected around the site. Site photos, you can see this is the central level, with the step down to the new terrace at the bottom here. It's just a clearer photo of the bottom terrace with the common beyond, and then this is taken from the neighbouring side. Another look back up the site to show the steps, and again to get this elevation with the neighbour. This photo is taken from the main path through the common, looking back up towards the application site, where you can see the gabion wall here. So currently there's no fence erected on the top of that. The fence proposed at the rear will be limited to 1.1 metres in height. That's to comply with building regulations and to minimise the overall height of the structure when viewed from the common. This photo was sent in with a public objection This is when it was erected, so all of the foliage around the site had been cut back. And then you can see one more recently with the foliage regrown, and then this is the impact that is seen today. A view down the boundary, so there's the neighbouring fence that joins the common up here. And then just another view with the footpath in view here. This is where the wall sits in proximity to that footpath and the impact that it may have. Looking down from the path towards the common, there's quite a bit of growth on the side of the site here, which obscures much of where the cabin wall starts. And then a view back up towards the top and towards the dwelling house, where there'll be a fence erected at what is original ground level along this side of the boundary. And a further photo looking down again. So summary of main points: the visual impact of development has been reduced where possible by limiting fence heights. The context of the site is that it forms a residential boundary between the common and the residential street beyond. The development is within, so it's got the dwelling as the backdrop when viewed from the common, so the fence won't exceed the height of that existing development. Development is not considered to result in unacceptable overlooking or impact on neighbouring light and outlook, and its development would not result in an unacceptable impact on the common access path. It is recommended that planning permission is granted.
Thank you. I have one speaker, Mrs. Julia Brink. And you have 3 minutes from when you start.
Good evening. My name is Julia Branke and I live in Kenilworth at 28 Littleton Close, very close to the footpath leading to the common that runs at the side of 32 Littleton Close. I was under the impression that no one should raise the ground by more than 30 centimeters. The owners of number 32 have raised their garden level by up to 3 meters. With the planned 1 meter fence on top, this will create a wall of around 4 meters in height, right on the boundary to the common and next to the footpath leading into the common. Such a structure is completely out of proportion for a residential setting. It has an overbearing appearance and its height will significantly reduce the natural light along the footpath, making it darker and potentially icy in winter. I cannot imagine that such a wall would be ever approved if it bordered on another private garden and feel the need to speak up on behalf of the common. Public spaces, such as the common, deserve the same respect and protection as private neighbors. I therefore urge the committee to refuse this retrospective application and help preserve the natural character and amenity of this much-loved public place. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Kennedy.
Can I ask, since it is adjacent to the common, which is owned by Warwick District Council, whether we have any comments on from Green Spaces team on whether this impacts or in any way damages the local nature reserve?
We do not have comment from Green Spaces on this one.
Would that not normally be a requirement to have that, since it affects our own local nature reserve?
I think, Councillor, that the nature of that judgment, if you like, around the physical, the impact of the physical development on the surroundings, whether they're owned by the District Council or not, is more a matter for members this evening. Officers feel that the impact isn't such that would support a refusal. The decision is one for members, though, of course.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to understand a bit more about the effect of the, or the height difference with this lower part of the garden and the existing fencing, because in reading your report, I must admit I got the impression there was, the main consideration is the increase in ground level. It would reach, the Gabion wall would reach a comparable final height as that seen on the neighbouring property. While the neighbouring wall is obscured by fencing, it considered that the height proposed represents a continuation of the existing rear ground levels along the boundary. And that's what I was trying to understand, because I heard from the public speaker there, with the lifting, the raising of the, the bottom of the garden, it actually introduces a 4-metre increase. And I'm thinking that does represent quite a change from visual impact if you're approaching from the common. Therefore, I would like to understand a bit more about that, because it says in the main the existing line remains similar, but I would wonder if you could expand a bit more on that, about the extent of the height of the boundary at the lower end of the garden. Thanks.
Yes, so if we look at this plan, so the original property did have a gabion wall. So you can see here it's set back from the boundary, and this being the common on the right-hand side. So I believe this is 2.5 metres as original, but then it slopes down as it reaches this would be the access path on the right-hand side here. So that there was a downward slope. And then what the proposal has done is brought it forward. So you see how it now is on the boundary itself, and then it levels it off flat. So this darker line is the original wall that is behind the gabion wall that is now in place, which is at this top line. So unfortunately, I'm not aware exactly of what was the original fence boundary put on top of that wall. But in terms of the increase, it would just be this section here closest to the path that sees the main increase.
And come back further, and therefore it's the greatest effect is not so much the increase in the gabion wall, it's the new fence that makes going to be quite a notable difference.
Anyone else? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to find out why were the permitted development rights removed under the original permission, and how does this affect the current application?
So I believe, or I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but there was a phase of housing developments where we would remove permitted development rights for walls, fences and means of enclosure, primarily for the purpose of retaining open frontages. Now, that applies in this case because they are proposing an erection of a wall, fence or means of enclosure. So planning permission is needed because of that original removal.
Thank you.
Councillor Gifford.
I have to say I agree with the officer's assessment, and I would propose that we, this gabion wall over time becomes part of the natural environment. I mean, to the extent that Warwick District Council has used the gabion wall in the dell off Albany Terrace to keep and because it actually, the bugs and the bees and so on go into it, and earth gets into it, and it will gradually green up so that it won't become less obtrusive as time goes on. I would be happy to propose that we accept the officer's, that we grant this application as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I have proposal to grant. Do I have a seconder? Councillor King. All those in favour of granting, please show. That's seven. Those against? 1. That's clearly carried. Thank you. And move on to agenda item 5, which is W/25/0671, the Old Fourpenny Shop Hotel.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The application before members this evening is at the the Old Fourpenny Shop Hotel, 2729 Crompton Street, Warwick. The application seeks to remove conditions 3 and 4 of permission W/91/0795 to allow the rear garden to be used in association with the pub and is not restricted for parking. The application is being presented to committee due to the number of objections received. The site relates to an existing public house and associated hotel located on the southwestern side of Crompton Street, Warwick. As you can see here, the site is outlined in red. It runs adjacent to the town centre boundary here on Crompton Street. It is located within a predominantly residential area with the racecourse just to the left of the site. Just a plan for members. So this is the approval from the 1991 permission showing the extent of the parking layout. I'm not sure if it's clear, but there are 12 spaces approved then. And moving to the a new site location plan, which shows the removal of the parking. And essentially the rear space will be used for, I guess, a sort of a pub garden in association with the use of the site. Photo for members to show how the site was historically used for parking. Again, it's not sort of in accordance with the layout plan, but it does show that it was used as parking area. And then a photo of the rear garden. Just for information, the rear garden structure is separate to a subject application. So that should be forthcoming depending on how this evening goes. And then again, photos of the site. Moving to a summary of main points. So as existing, the works are in breach of conditions 3 and 4 of the 1991 permission. The application seeks to remove these conditions to allow the courtyard to be used in association with the pub and not for parking. There is adequate capacity demonstrated locally with 2 public car parks within close proximity, and the county highways do have no objection on highway safety grounds, and if anything, they do consider it a betterment overall. On that basis, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no speakers on this, so members. Councillor Wade.
Thank you. Sorry, let's move this over. So I just wanted to query something that's confused me, but it might just be me. So we've got the condition 3 about the proposed car parking area, how it should be laid out, etc. And that's a condition of that granted application W/91/0795. And then in the assessment on page 3, we're told the streets surrounding the site are heavily restricted, therefore preventing use of the site in being able to park freely, as would be the case with the 12 off-street parking spaces within the car park. And then on page 4, under highway safety, we're told that the highway authority has been consulted. They note that the parking area approved under the application I just mentioned would not work in any case, that 3 spaces would be captive, 2 spaces obstruct each other, a couple more spaces obstruct vehicles entering and exiting. In effect, only 7 of the spaces are usable. So if we were to refuse planning permission, which is the removal of the conditions, are we conditioning the applicant to implement an unusable parking arrangement? So essentially members would need to think about sort of 2 aspects to this. So you've got the amenity concerns, which is there capacity locally? And then secondly is the highway safety concern, and that's where sort of the Highways Authority comments do come in.
based on the comments from the Highway Safety Officer, on the Highways Authority Officer, if committee were to recommend refusal of the application, they are saying that only half of those spaces are usable.
Carry on.
Thank you. So that condition was approved to be applied, but in practice it's unworkable on the basis that it would need to be workable in order to mitigate the impact on the external environment, is my understanding. Having visited the site today, as I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, I can see from my site visit and what we've been presented with in terms of the documentation, presentation materials, that yes, that arrangement wouldn't work in practice. And I noticed as well that the brick archway in the opening to that parking area was clearly designed for sort of horses and carts rather than modern motorised vehicles. And that there is also additional parking available at the racecourse. And it might be early in the discussion to say this, but depending on the views of other committee members, their thoughts, I would like to propose that we grant planning permission for this application, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report. Thank you.
Right, that's a proposal. Do I have a seconder?
And the addendum as well.
Sorry?
And the addendum as well.
And the addendum as well? Yes. Good. Does anyone need to speak, or can we vote?
Sorry.
Just to, for further information on this potential about the parking, the fact that highways and the local parking decided there was probably sufficient space nearby with the availability of car parks, public car parks in the nearby area, thinking about the racecourse, obviously. There's been no, and it was, I noticed it was the main thread of the opposing comments, public comments, were about the impact on parking. Have there been any parking issues up to now with, you know, users of that hotel having to park in the nearby streets? I realise you need permits as well. Have there been any issues up to now?
As a planning officer, the only sort of concerns that have come forward are the objections received as part of this application. I think members should be mindful that whilst the area is heavily restricted in terms of permits, so the business wouldn't be able to apply for those residence permits, a parking survey was carried out which did show sufficient capacity. So that allowed officers to sort of assess the amenity impacts on those local residents as well. So whilst they wouldn't be able to apply for permits, there was capacity within the street for them to park.
Thank you. I have a proposal and second to accept the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. We then move on to the final item on, well, the final application on the agenda, which is agenda item 7, W/25/1253, listed building consent.
Thank you, Chair. The application before members this evening is a listed building consent at the former Kenilworth Bar, 61 Warwick Road, Kenilworth. Like I said, the application seeks listed building consent for internal and external alterations to allow for a change of use from a sui generis use to one dwelling, which falls within C3, and two apart hotels, which again is C3. Just sort of update for members that that has changed as part of the update sheet, but I'm happy to answer any sort of questions regarding that. So the application has been brought to committee due to the number of objections received. The site relates to a Grade 2 listed property on the east side of Kenilworth, Warwick Road, Kenilworth. And from the aerial site, members will be able to see that it is located within the town centre boundary. Moving on to the plans, you've got the existing ground and first floor plans, existing front and outbuilding elevations, existing rear and side elevations, So we've got the proposed and ground floor plans. So if you can see my cursor, just so members are aware, the changes include the closures of non-historic openings. We have a small rear infill extension here at the back. We've got solar panels to a modern outbuilding, and there are some fenestration changes and the addition of conservation-style roof lights. Moving to the proposed front and outbuilding elevations. Proposed rear and sides, as you can see there, you can see the small infill extension at a single-storey level, which predominantly glazed to the rear. Again, you can see the solar panels there, and then the addition of the conservation-style roof lights. Some context, we've got the front elevation with the wider street scene. The rear elevation, that's the Harbour Court. Some internal photos for members, so yeah, it was used as a hotel and bar. And moving to a summary of main points. Sufficient amendments have been made to address the Conservation Officer's concern, and that was predominantly regarding the subdivision of the ground floor bedroom. All works are not considered to result in harm to the character of the listed building. Many of the objections that have been received are not consideration for this application type and can be carried forward to the planning application. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Members? Councillor Kennedy.
So could I just ask what an apart hotel is and how that differs from what was originally put in?
Yeah, so this cropped up after the validation of the planning application. So initially it came forward as a hotel, which is use class C1. And I noted on the plans that there is no sort of formal reception area. After querying it with the applicant, it was noted that it would be used more as a part hotel, which is Airbnb or holiday lets sort of arrangement. And essentially each unit has independent facilities, so that could be kitchen, bathroom and bedroom. And that's why it falls within the use class C3.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dixon.
Apologies, Chair. I'm just had a mad panic in the declarations of interest. I don't know whether Patricia Tuckwell can confirm. I live within 0.1 mile of this property. Should I have declared that as an interest? I don't think I should have done, but I'm not
It
sure.
could be next door and you don't declare.
No. Okay.
Councillor, if it's something that's potentially going to affect the value of your property, which, you know, then that doesn't sound like it, so.
Generally speaking, you're all right. Councillor Yellow-Program.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. This is Grade 2 listed building. The proposed alterations, do they preserve the Grade 2 listing building's historic character? Thanks.
Yeah, so the Council's Conservation Officer has been consulted. They raised sort of concerns with the initial subdivision of the ground floor bedroom. In terms of the internal alterations to block up non-historic openings, they are acceptable because they're non-historic. And then in terms of the solar panels on the outbuilding, again, that's a modern outbuilding, so sort of has no impact on the integrity of the listed building. So overall, it was considered that the impact would be neutral.
Thank you.
Councillor Gifford.
Yes, I think that it is just listed building consent, and if it wasn't a listed building, we wouldn't be coming to us at all. The Conservation Officer is now happy that the changes, particularly to that downstairs bedroom, which they considered to be originally was going to be difficult to, they're happy now with that. I would therefore suggest that we grant the application with the conditions as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I have a proposal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Luckhurst is seconding.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second that one.
All those in favour of granting, please show. That's unanimous. That is clearly carried. Don't all dash off because we've now got parts of the other matters, the appeals report.
Thank you, Chairman. So councillors, we shared this report with you earlier on today. You'll see that there are quite a few appeal decisions received over the last few weeks since your last meeting. And you might remember we've previously indicated to you that the proportion of appeals that were being allowed over the last few months was quite high and something for us all really to be aware of. What I think you'll see from the report before you this evening is that we've had the majority of the decisions received were appeals that were dismissed, not all of them, but the majority of them. So the effect of that in terms of overall performance is that it's now starting to move very much in the right direction. We're in a better place than we were a few weeks ago. However, it's something that as officers and reporting to members that we need to just continue to be aware of. And it is not at all beyond the realms of possibility. You know, if we think about the reporting period as being the financial year, should the nature of appeal decisions coming through continue as it has been over the last few weeks, then there is every opportunity for us to get back to broadly where we would want to be by the end of the financial year. Happy to take any questions or comments on any individual appeals, but I might not know the answer.
Councillor Kennedy.
I'm just interested in the Stratford Road 231430, where we, as a committee, we voted to refuse it in line with officers' recommendations because we really didn't like the whole sort of parking and access arrangements and so on, and felt to be very detrimental. And yet the appeal was upheld. Are there any lessons we can take from that? Because I think it's pretty, I forget whether it's unanimous.
Right,
but
I'm just trying to find it. Which one was it? Which one was it again, Councillor?
231430.
Oh, yes. I think that was an unbalanced decision, recommendation, as sometimes is the case. I think, I don't know whether I would call it a lesson, but certainly the inspector has taken a slightly different view on, it was really about the impact of the reduced level of car parking on residential amenity, i.e. it might impact spaces on street, that was the concern, rather than a highway safety issue. So I think that there is something for us to be aware of there, in terms of, you know, the inspector has come to a slightly different conclusion. However, the inspector is very clear, because I think there was also a cost application here, and the inspector's view wasn't that the council had behaved in a way that would lead to an award of costs. So the inspector didn't think that we'd behaved unreasonably. It just happened that the inspector sort of tipped the balance a slightly different way. That is what happens sometimes, I think, councillors. So, yeah, it's something to be aware of. You know, should similar or proposals with similar types of issues come forward in future. But then we're always going to be looking at each case on its individual merits. So if you're kind of asking if that sets some kind of precedent, I would say not. But it is nevertheless just something to be aware of going forward.
Any other comments? Always an interesting read. Okay, if there aren't, then there's no more business for the committee, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.